all-you-can-eat restaurants go hand in hand with America, and along with our pew-pew bullet blasters and crumbling highways, we're the go-to for foreigners to slander us with. But hey, we don't care what anyone else thinks, because while they're eating portions that could barely be qualified as a meal, we're stuffing our faces with a medieval king's dining room's worth of options. Buffets were always an introvert's dream, because besides your waiter coming over to refill glasses and take plates, most places would just have you pay, grab your own food, and leave a tip on the table before you leave. Around my hometown, there were a few buffets that me and my family would try to eat at every few months. All of them at one point or another were plagued with the same issues, and since the dip in quality affected me personally, let's shoot through them all and see who's left standing. But first, cafes I'd go to work at always had free public Wi-Fi, but nobody tells you just how easy it is for hackers to tap in and meddle with your information. It's not even that hard to hack people nowadays, because while I'm ordering my coffee, a 12-year-old with some cheap hardware could already have breached through and snagged my data. And it's not even just hackers, because internet service providers and big tech companies are also eager to get their hands on your information. That's where ExpressVPN comes in, a virtual private network that acts like a secure tunnel for your internet traffic. It encrypts and reroutes your connection through their secure servers, which protects your private information from hackers, data thieves, or anyone just snooping on the public Wi-Fi. And it's not just about security, because ExpressVPN also gives you more freedom online. With servers in over 105 countries, you can change your virtual location with just a click. Being able to teleport your connection across the world also means you can bypass censorship and access content that's normally restricted in your region. Find out how you can get 3 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/Blaine. Thanks to them for sponsoring, and let's get right back to the video. Sweet Tomatoes, or I guess Soup Plantation in some states based on how quirky they were feeling that day, was a health-based buffet serving up fresh salads, soups, baked goods, and desserts. Everything was green and vibrant, and even though you could easily just gorge yourself on bread and overdose on poppy seed dressing, it was a nice novelty restaurant that, at least while I was there, was pretty dang alright. At least at my location, you'd walk in and immediately go through a cafeteria-esque line to design the salad of your dreams before paying to enter and getting access to the rest of the building. Theoretically, you could make a whole salad just to have your card get declined at the register, or play with all the open food being left out and leave, so I appreciated the place's trust that their clientele would actually respect the place while they're there. Once you'd get past the salad guard, you'd sit down on a stool almost as tall as yourself and munch on all the leaves you gathered earlier. Maybe I'm just misremembering how tall these stools actually were because I was like 15 or something, but I definitely remember some kind of fear of climbing down and falling to my death, and sometimes it would just stop me from getting up to try to grab more food. The rest of Sweet Tomatoes was just lackluster in my opinion. Their soups were mostly water, and everything else tasted like it was sitting out on the counter since yesterday. Always a great time when you bite into a muffin and break some teeth in the process. But hey, if you caught Sweet Tomatoes during a busy hour, then they'd actually be encouraged to make fresh batches of their food. All we gotta do is wait for the dinner hour and... Wait, where is everybody? So turns out people weren't all that thrilled to pay about the same price for salad and dough when Golden Corral had just as good a salad bar and an endless steak selection just 7 minutes down the street. During the pandemic, regulations on restaurant policies also shot every all-you-can-eat buffet in the kneecaps. People couldn't sit anywhere near each other, there was a limit for how many customers could be in the building at any time, and mask-conscious visitors stopped dining entirely. Before the pandemic, Sweet Tomatoes had around 100 locations, but once the new rules were dropped, they immediately shriveled up and died. A lack of customers meant that waiters weren't getting the tips they'd need to survive, so nobody would want to bust tables. Chefs would rarely make new batches of food, and the variety of options also sucked because of the same issues. But if there was one thing the franchise did right, it was in making a bunch of rage bait television ads that I showed to some of my friends to get their reactions.
What did you make? Pasta la pizza, baby.
No fucking shot he said that.
Pasta la pizza, baby.
Oh shot he said that.
It's hard to get better than that. Surely they don't, right?
Yeah,
like, that
they
was
can't top
11
that.
likes.
How do we feel about this?
That meeting was intense, huh?
I know, but hey, at least... Carol? Power move.
What is she doing?
Sweet potato sundae? You've earned it.
She did not earn that.
How do we feel about soft serve on the sweet potato?
Okay.
No,
I thought that was a hash brown.
No, death now.
Bacon, 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 bacon.
No.
Bacon on everything?
No. What's his name? First and last name. Address.
Happy salad. create what you crave.
Okay.
And sweet
You can make happy faces with your salad. That's sweet tomato.
Anyone can do that anywhere.
Besides that, though, I guess sweet tomatoes just isn't so sweet anymore. God, that sounded way cooler in my head. I had no idea that Pizza Hut was a buffet until my college friends took me out to one in 2018. Apparently, an all-you-can-eat Pizza Hut gimmick was way more common back in the early 2000s when the restaurant was really selling its whole dine-in shtick. Keep in mind that we all lived in the middle of scenic nowhere, North Carolina, so after just explaining how a lack of customers screws over the whole point of a buffet, why this Pizza Hut was still offering it when all the others stopped was beyond me. Were they doing anything special to circumvent it? Nope. 4 rock-hard pizzas were sitting under heating lamps waiting for a poor unfortunate soul to take a bite and get their stomach pumped afterwards. I know that because whenever I'd order chicken topping at any of my other local Pizza Huts, I'd always get food poisoning. So it's not like any of us were expecting something different, like a priest in the kitchen magically purifying the poultry. I had better common sense than to eat anything here, but my friends did and said they were completely underwhelmed. Thankfully, they also ignored everything with chicken on it like it was their natural human evolved trait to avoid what would obviously kill you. There was unlimited salad and bread as well, but the bread was hard and there weren't any dressings for the salad, so those were basically off the table. Gonna go on a limb here and say the manager of this franchise building never got the memo that Pizza Hut wasn't doing buffets anymore. It was probably a company-wide email, but since the owners only knew how to use fax machines, it never got to them. And it makes sense why they'd stop promoting buffets because Pizza Hut is super niche for all you can eat. Besides the salad bar, every other menu option was dough and carbs, pizza, pasta, breadsticks, cinnamon sticks. Salad too, but that's always tacked on to make you feel healthier while you scoop another portion of macaroni and cheese on your plate. The goal is just to fill you up with as much cheap bread as possible to make sure you can't eat more than the entry fee is worth. On its own, I can't imagine why you'd dine here instead of ordering a large pizza and eating in the luxury of your home, but there was a direct competitor to Pizza Hut that I felt had a gimmick to make their limited buffet actually worth visiting. My parents never let us eat at Chuck E. Cheese, probably because my dad couldn't eat gluten, and just like Pizza Hut, basically everything on the menu was bread. But Chuck E. Cheese had the genius idea to pair children's entertainment with food, something that I think massively stretched the value of their buffet. And although COVID would later strike down their dine-in restaurants just as hard as every other buffet across America, the mouse had a plan to keep his buildings up and running until the pandemic died down. Pascali's Pizza and Wings was Chuck E. Cheese's alias on Grubhub, taking advantage of the kitchens in their restaurants and everyone's need to social distance to deliver pizza and wings on the side. If it wasn't going to be all you can eat, then my patriot palate wasn't going to tolerate it though. Coupled with the fact that Pascali's animatronic was horrific, I mean all of their animatronics were, but that just added to the problems. And that whenever we'd go to Chuck E. Cheese, all of us would wind up sick for weeks, pandemic or not. All of that would just cement that the mouse's house was a no-go zone from then on out. And even when the pandemic ended and buffets fully reopened, most of their locations barely even did all you can eat anymore. I guess even though the gimmick of unlimited food and games, unlimited games by the way, seemed goated on the surface, but the success of Pascali's Pizza proved that they could charge as much for access to an entire buffet for only a single pizza and still profit. I'm getting a little agitated over all my favorite restaurant types just ending their buffets entirely, so let's get into some places that are actually still mostly running. Rock and Roll Sushi is an anomaly to the all-you-can-eat space. Starting in Alabama, a state I'd never consider first for a love of rock and roll or sushi, the place gave all of its sushi wild names like the Metalhead, Crowd Surfer, and Sweet Home Alabama, and decorated with rock and roll art and music too. But the one I'd go to hit every trace of that by removing every rock and roll and blasting pop music out of the sound speakers. For $17.99 during dinner, you could grab an endless amount of sushi from their conveyor belts that'd curve around every booth in the buffet. They had a pretty immersive amount of rolls to choose from, and also made every American proud by putting sauces on the rolls to enhance the flavor of their otherwise low-quality sushi. I mean, at any other restaurant, 6 quality rolls would cost you the same as eating enough to feed a small village here, so there's definitely something dubious going on. But hey, this was quantity over quality, and even trashy sushi still costs a lot to feed customers. Also, unlike in Japan, where they make little minigames out of inserting your plates into a machine as a way to win prizes and clear off your table, Rock and Roll Sushi servers would rarely visit your table and force you to stack up obscenely tall towers of plates in the meantime. My whole family could each absorb a good 30 pieces of sushi before passing out, which probably made up for the cost of entry, but would always cause a literal mountainside to form out of empty plates as we tried to make room for more food on the table. Besides that, the usual issue of carbs kicks back in with the weight gain of consuming almost 2 pounds of rice, but not counting my personal diet's failures, the restaurant is just alright. They also have miso soup, teriyaki, hibachi, spring rolls, the only good option out of the rest, which they always seem to screw up. But the lack of rock and roll in my rock and roll sushi killed it on arrival. 0 out of 10, never coming back. If it's not obvious yet, the biggest value of a buffet comes with its variety. Your food could be absolute garbage, but if you have twice the options over a competitor, I might be willing to scarf down a few extra pieces of rubbery chicken. The ability to sample a million different foods and intricately design a full course meal on every plate is such a charm. And even though it just encourages people to pig out, that freedom is unmatched anywhere else in the restaurant scene. So it's incredible to note that despite everything, my favorite and the biggest buffet on this list is still up and running. Golden Corral's been my family's go-to buffet since I was small. It's got the largest variety, the largest dining halls, and the largest customers imaginable. The first one appeared in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and having only been to the ones in this state, can bet that this is the best it gets for the franchise. They offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner options based on the time you get there, with admission costing more based on how late in the day it gets. I mean, all the other places also do that, I just thought to mention it now, I guess. But anyway, a trick we'd always do would be to waltz right in before lunch would end, so we'd get the lunch price and the entire more luxury dinner menu. And on that dinner menu is the prestigious Golden Corral steaks, the part of the restaurant that loses them the most money when customers eat it, and is guarded by a chef who scares off socially anxious customers out of asking for more. Bouncer tactics aside, all the food is usually great when it's not sitting out on a hot plate for hours, which is awesome when you could predict when the place would have customers. Sure, it's the largest buffet around, but that also meant it needed the largest crowds around to keep the food rotating. An occasional plate of stale fried chicken was just one of the setbacks, though. Modern day Golden Corral is nothing like it was a decade ago, and I got new footage to prove it. First of all, one thing that pisses me off is that they flipped all of our soda dispensers to be on the server's side. Back in the day, you could fill your cup with a drink while waiting to pay and enter. But now you have to pointlessly tell the cashier what drink you want brought to your table. People unfamiliar with Golden Corral might just point out that this is pretty normal restaurant behavior. But no, because you get to seat yourself wherever you'd like at most places, and your server has no idea what drink you ordered. You could also just lie and say you ordered a soft drink, which costs money instead of the free water, and most servers won't bat an eye. And while on pointless changes, the silverware definitely lost its edge because one place literally gave our table plastic forks and knives. The branding was for their go-to service, Golden Corral's solution to the COVID situation, and similar to Chuck E. Cheese, you could order pre-portioned food and have it picked up by a delivery driver and sent to your place. Just to compare though, a single steak off the website costs as much as access to the full buffet, so let that sink in. It's also normal for delivery orders to come with a few plastic spoons and knives because you can't give people metal utensils. But why were dine-in customers being treated the same way? They never were before. The plastic drops the entire in-house experience, and my dad got so disturbed with the idea of eating with plastic that he demanded they find where the silverware went and give us all a pair. The crazy part is that the server who went looking came back the first time saying they didn't have metal utensils anymore. But when my dad got even more insistent, they looked even harder and found some deep in the back, in like these little paper sleeves, seemingly with the full intent of being used by customers. So turns out they were cutting down on dishwashing by upping their plastic waste instead. Some other weird flaws in the place only became apparent when I went to take some recordings. Like how all the new wall decorations had a weird pixelation going on with their designs. Some of them look like they used stock photos because the pixels are also inconsistent. And the wood borders on all of them are just absolutely awful. I guess compared to the old wall decorations, it's a step up. Because before, they used pictures of families eating in Golden Corral and praising the cheapest menu options like meatloaf and salad. But basically, they'd all stare directly into the camera, making it look like they were always beaming their gaze towards you anywhere you were sitting in the restaurant. Horrific. I remember the music choice that used to play in the restaurant also being way better back in the day. It was a kinda funky jazz type playlist that really flowed with the relaxed nature of the buffet atmosphere. Now, just like every other restaurant, we've regressed to remixes of pop songs, so that's another L there. Do you remember the ice cream flavor stations? Gone! Go enjoy the underwhelming soft serve instead, buddy, and be happy that we also removed half of the ice cream toppings. The cheesecake would drive me nuts for how inconsistent the recipe would be across the entire North Carolina triangle for some unknown reason. We had the chocolate fountain that was advertised all over TV as the 8th wonder of the world.
Golden Corral's chocolate wonderfall has been called the 8th wonder of the world. Drenched strawberries, big fudge squares, and more in this non-stop melted perfection. Only at Golden Corral.
But once COVID hit, they completely pulled every fountain because it would recycle the same infected chocolate all day. Also, during most of the pandemic, people weren't even allowed to put food on their own plates anymore, and that social anxiety of talking with the steak chef was now the case with every option on the menu. God, it was like school cafeterias all over again. Then, as a smaller wound, the Asian grill at my local Corral got completely cut, removing some random bell pepper dishes which I'm sure nobody really cared about. Although Golden Corral's kinda bounced back since COVID, there's battle scars all over these buildings. At least they still do all you can eat though, and in the wake of every other franchise changing tactics, they hold the monopoly on a dying restaurant style and are still just doing alright. Having recently moved out of North Carolina though, and with the nearest Corral more than an hour away, this might be the last time I set foot into one of these buildings. Even with all these buffets' flaws though, I wouldn't trade them for the world, because at the end of the day, they embody the American dream of overconsumption and diminished quality. Sometimes you just want a trough full of slop, and I'll be these places' loyal little piggy until they kick me out at closing time. Blaine, never simple, and remember to chew before you swallow.